Hello everyone! Today I'm gonna talk about weird French cars yet again. Let's start with Renault. Now we will start with the Versatis. The Versatis is supposed to be the successor of the Renault Citroën, but it sold terribly because it has less than a third of the Citroën sales figure. And I can understand that because it looks particular. Unlike the Renault Aventime, it came out with multiple diesel engines, even a V6 diesel, which is very rare. Incredible! I don't see the use of a V6 diesel engine in an executive car, but alright. But it is not the only V6 into it. In fact, there's a petrol V6 that is pretty well known. The petrol V6 is straight out of a Nissan 350Z. It may be ugly, but it goes fast. Well, I'm not sure about that because Versatis is heavier than the 350Z. This car was a huge flop. It's so bad that Renault lost 18,000 euros for each Versatis sold. It was actually a French president car. It was Nicolas Sarkozy's car, but it is not a great advertisement since a lot of people dislike him. Now let's go with another Renault. Ah yes, my favorite cars. Cars without license. Now this one managed to be uglier than other cars without license. The Renault Twizy. But it has scissor doors. I don't know why, but it looks cool. Usually. But it is not only a car without license. You can buy one that has more horsepower with the huge power of 17 horsepower. And you can guess, it goes very fast. It can beat any car with the max speed of 80 km per hour. At least, it goes faster than the 2CV. You know, the one from 1949. Speaking of 2CVs, let's talk about Citroën. 2CVs are weird. However, there's a weirder one. The 2CV 4x4 Sahara. The 2CV is very important in the French automotive world. It was our Fiat 500. It was produced for a very long time, from 1948 to 1990, so about 42 years. So a lot of special versions of the 2CV started being produced. There is about 35 different versions of the 2CV, but there's one that stands out, and it is the 4x4 Sahara. Like the name indicates, it can be four-wheel drive, but to make it four-wheel drive, they had an amazing idea. The car is originally front-wheel drive, so Citroën had the idea to take an engine, put one in the front, like usual, and also put one in the back. If you want front-wheel drive, well, you just start the front engine. But if you want all-wheel drive, you also start the engine in the back. It also has two fuel tanks, one for each engine. It wasn't a great success. It was way more expensive than a regular 2CV, so they are extremely rare. And if you want to restore one, well, that's an issue. A lot of parts on this car was unique to this car, which means a lot of parts of a base model 2CV has a high chance to not match with the Sahara. A lot of times you have to redo the parts, and that can be very expensive. Now let's go with another Citroën. It is called the Citroën Ami 6. So at the time, Citroën either had a low-cost car, being the 2CV, or a high-end car, being the DS, but there was no in-between. So they launched the Project AM. They planned to use parts from the 2CV to reduce costs, but they quickly realized that the 2CV engine is very slow, and the 2CV engine would be in pain in the bigger body of the Ami. So they made a bigger version of the 2CV engine, and it made a lot of power with 22 horsepower. Every supercar right now has their timber shivered, so it got the chassis and the engine of a 2CV and the interior quality of a DS. It is basically a fancy 2CV. The front of the car looks very sad, and the back looks straight out of a sci-fi movie. It was also nicknamed the 3CV because in France there's something called cheval fiscal, which means it is a fiscal unit, and it is also why the 2CV was named like that. And in 1969, the Ami 6 was replaced with the Ami 8, which is very similar, but kind of different also. In my opinion, it looks less weird, but the looks are still peculiar. Now, you know the Citroën M35. If you don't know, watch the first episode. Well, it is not the only Citroën with a rotary engine. There is one based off the Citroën GS called the GS Birotor. It was meant to be the luxurious version of the Citroën GS. The engine may be only 1 liter, however, it makes 107 horsepower, which is very impressive. Unlike the Citroën M35, it has 2 spinning triangles. Seems like a nice, funky car, however, it was a flop. like a huge flop. You may wonder why. Well, there is an issue with rotary engine, is that they are the opposite of fuel efficient, and the GS came out during an oil crisis. Only 874 sold. Now let's go with another brand called Peugeot. Now it was designed by Pininfarina, the one who designed Ferraris. Well, they also designed Peugeots like the 406 Coupe. Well, they also designed a beautiful Peugeot, the 1007. Wow, it is really a beautiful car. I really want that in my living room. It is really the most beautiful car ever. Like, Peugeot 104? Awful looking. Peugeot 305? Get out of here! This is the pinnacle of beauty. It is supposed to be a very small MPV, like you took a 807 and just compressed it. It should look like that, apparently. For the interior, you could have 12 different colors. But if you got tired of it, don't worry. You can buy a new set to change out all the plastics to have another color for only 250 euros. A small price for salvation. It seems like this car was meant for older people, hence the sliding doors that could open by themselves. Well, guess what? This car was a flop. Peugeot lost around 15,000 euros per car sold, because also some engines felt very slow, as 75 horsepower for 1.3 tons is not enough. Even on the Peugeot 306 this engine is slow, so adding 200 kilograms to it is not a good thing. And the automatic transmission is also the opposite of great. Now let's go back with Renault again, with the Renault Wind. Renault wanted to make a roadster, so they took a Twingo 2, mutilated it till it looked like a roadster. It came with two different engines, a 1.1 liter turbocharged engine and a 1.6 liter naturally aspirated engine. Unlike other cars where you could put the roof away, it only had 2 seats, unlike the 206cc which had 4 seats. Which means people will most likely buy a 206cc instead of a Wind. They also had a bright idea to launch it in autumn, so it was a pretty bad flop. In fact, it was only produced 2 years. Now let's go with a car that Renault knew that it wouldn't have great sales figure. In the 90s, Renault Williams was doing very well in Formula 1, which led to the Clio Williams and the Renault Spider to be created. Since Renault wanted to brand their new sports car with Renault badges, they gave up Alpine and created Renault Sport. The Spider was made with F1 engineers. They use a F-type engine that is the same as the Clio Williams engine. It may only give 150 horsepower, but for a car that weighs less than a ton, it is very good. It does a 0 to 100 in 6.9 seconds and it can go up to 216 km per hour. Unlike most French cars, it is rear-wheel drive, and like most French cars, it is manual. There is only 1,726 Spiders that were made, and it makes sense, since it was made for people who like sports car and racing and have the budget for a second car. This car is very simple and uncomfortable. It doesn't even have a roof, and some don't even have a windshield. I think it could be fun if you have this car as a daily. However, I live in Brittany and it rains a lot, so I cannot. It still looks very fun. Now let's go with a brand I didn't talk about. Well, I mean, slightly. I talked about cars without license, and one of those brands is Aixam. Aixam makes mostly micro cars that don't require a driving license. But in 1990, they decided to create a supercar, going from the slowest to the fastest. So they created a brand called Mega, so basically it is Aixam under a new name, and they created the Mega Track. This thing has an engine called the M120, a huge 6-liter V12 Mercedes engine. It has a stupidly big fuel tank, which has the capacity of 110 liters, and the car is also big, 5 meters long and 2.2 meters wide. The wheels are 20 inches, and the tires on it are bigger than the Ferrari F40, which already has pretty big boys. It was an insane flop, only 6 were created. And for a good reason. The cost to get it was for the small price tag of 300,000 60,000 euros. Another French sports car at that time, called the Alpine A610, costed around 60,000 euros, which is a lot less expensive. They are extremely rare, we don't know the location of most of them. There is two at the Aixam headquarters, and one has been seen in Monaco, and the rest we really don't know. Also, the reasons why the wheels are so big and the car is pretty high for a supercar, well, it's because this car is also meant to go off-road. Yes, take your supercar to go on dirt roads. I mean, if you look from far away enough, it looks like a WRC car. It looks cool, it's pretty funky. I guess it's more of a concept car than an actual car. Alright, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more videos, you can subscribe, like the video if you liked it, and comment if you want to say something. And don't forget to stare at this picture of a TU3 engine. Goodbye!